And welcome back to Myths, Monsters, and Mullets, the show where the strange, the unexplained, and the weird take center stage, and where the people behind the encounters matter just as much as the encounters themselves. We're not here just to talk about what was seen. We're here to understand who saw it, how it changed them, and why it still matters. Before we dive in, a quick shout out to our supporters over on Patreon. If you want to help keep the show independent, ad-free, and unapologetically weird, head over to Patreon. You'll find members-only episodes, early access to the public episodes, and bonus material you won't see or hear anywhere else. If you've had an encounter or something weird that you've never been able to explain, I want to hear from you. Email me at mythsandmullets@gmail.com. That's mythsandmullets@gmail.com. Your experience could be featured on a future episode. Don't forget to mark your calendars. June 6, 2026. I'll be speaking at the Arkansas Cryptid Fest in North Little Rock, Arkansas. If you're into cryptids, folklore, and listening to great speakers, that's where you need to be. It's put on by Drunken Cryptids. I'll be there along with a lot of your other favorite podcasters. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed, like, comment, leave a review, share the show with a friend who lives for the unexplained. As we come to the end of the first year for Myths, Monsters, and Mullets, I wanted to take a look back at this season and reflect on how the show has evolved from just a TikTok-style live show to what it's become today. As you know, I don't have a co-host, so I invited Alan from Nevermore Hollows to come help me celebrate what has been an amazing first year. The result is 3 episodes of clips from the most interesting guests, the best encounters, and the friends we've made along the way. While you don't have to listen to them in order, I do highly recommend it. And with that, let's start the show.
Out in the woods, shadows creep slow. Footprints deep where no man should go. Cold winds howl through hollers and brooks. Whispers of Bigfoot in the way it looks. Myths, monsters, and mullets in the night. Under a pale moon, strange glowing light. Truth out there like a blade it cuts. Myths, monsters, and mullets run amok.
And welcome back to Myths, Monsters, and Mullets. I am your host, John Methenkamp. It's the end of the year. It's time to reminisce on the events of this past year. I wouldn't even have a podcast if it weren't for my guest tonight. That's Alan Wattenbarger from Nevermore Hollows. Alan, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
I am great. And I have to say thank you, because a little over a year ago, I wasn't even thinking about doing a podcast, and here I am now, some 60 episodes in.
Yeah.
And it's all because of you, because you said, dude, start a podcast.
Yeah.
And I did.
I remember we were drinking PBR. And I said,
don't know about all that.
if you want to eat up every bit of free time you have in your life, start a podcast.
And he isn't wrong. He isn't wrong. It's a second job, but I love my second job. You know, I just wish it paid the bills like the first job.
Right. I agree. You know, and that's the beauty of having a podcast. You know, it gives us an opportunity to reach out and just connect with people, and you know, it's a work of passion. You know, we're doing it because we love it. And I think it's great. I like what you've accomplished so far, you know, but it takes, people don't understand how much time it takes. It
Absolutely.
really does. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah. I mean, the interviewing part, that's a breeze.
Yeah.
It's the editing.
Yeah.
You know, for an hour long episode, I may have 2 or 3 hours of editing in there.
And that's what people don't understand. You would think, well, it's only an hour long. How can the editing take 3 hours? That happens to me all the time. Well, we mess up, right? We get off track. There might be a glitch, and then you also try to just be concise and you say, well, I know time is the most valuable resource we have. So if somebody's investing their time with me, I want it to be the best hour or whatever, however long that episode is. I don't want them to feel that they wasted their time.
Right. Right. And I don't want to feel like I wasted my time.
Right. So by the time that you get finished editing, my wife will go, she goes, you said you were going to go edit and it's an hour long. You were literally in your room for 5 hours. Well, I had to edit. Then, I got sleepy and took a nap because the editing was taking so long. But yeah, it does. It takes a lot. And then when you care as much as you do about your show, right? And you pour into that show, you want it to be not only not do you want it to waste anybody's time, but you want it to be as polished as it can possibly be.
And at first, it wasn't all that polished, I can tell you that.
Mine either.
I didn't know what I was doing, man. I didn't know what I was doing. I'm self-taught on all this,
Right. So which most podcasters are. That's the funny thing. We've all had to learn things that we didn't know. And when you get into something like this, like a lot of things, but especially with podcasting, there's things that you don't know until you get in it and you go, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And so with that, so we were just talking a little bit offline a second ago. So you went from having, a TikTok channel, right? And you had, 10,000 followers on there and that was short form for the most part, right? And you had more of a comedy shtick. So you move over to podcasting and now you can track where you're seen and what you're listening to, what your audience is. And we were just talking, you're listened to all over the world, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And it surprises me that Canada, you need to step it up because you're number 4 on the list.
Right.
But I'm doing well in the UK and Australia, and
Yeah.
to my UK and Australia listeners, shoot me a message. I want to hear your paranormal encounters too.
Wouldn't that be great? If I can ask you a question, and now that you're heard, you can track this and, we're still tiny, both our shows are still relatively tiny, but we're reaching people all over the world. What did you originally envision? Well, one, you said being a podcaster wasn't even on your radar. Okay. So the first question I would ask is, do you regret it?
No, absolutely not.
Right. Good.
This has been the funnest year of my life, I think. Alan,
Yes,
where are we at?
we are in Ada, Ohio at
The Ohio Bigfoot Jamboree.
woohoo!
And who put it on?
The Cryptids of the Corn, Justin and Jay.
I know those guys.
I do too.
Wow, it's a small world.
I feel like we're in a special club.
We are.
Yeah.
We are. We're just getting started out here. Come out, meet the mullet, meet the guys from Nevermore Hollows. Chris is back there flirting with my wife. We got Wild Bill walking down the street.
There he is.
But we're just getting started out here at the Ohio Bigfoot Jamboree, Ada, Ohio. We're here till 5. So come out and see us. Got anything, Liz?
Come see us.
Already getting covered. I am unarmed. I'm about to flip the camera around so you can see the mayhem. The lines are still very long for the confetti, but looks like they're going to run out tonight. It's the last day. So if you haven't, I got confetti in my goatee. Can't pick any fingers up that way. Mrs. Pike gave me the look. But we're going to switch around here, and I might not talk very much when I get in the crowds because people will try to throw it in the mouth. But here we go. Apparently, when you want to go see the Goonies house, you got to hike because it's a freaking no outlet street. That's all right. I'm taking a hike to see the Goonies house. I don't know how Chunk made it up this fucking hill. feel like I'm in better shape than he was. Apparently not. Still pretty cool though. I saw the Goonies house and I was going to do the truffle shuffle, but it's cold and I didn't want my nipples poking out.
Cool. Very cool. I'm glad you enjoy it because, and when I was listening to your stuff and I was like, especially it was your lives, your lives are what, well, I'm like, wait a minute, there's something there that could hopefully reach a broader audience if it was on different platforms. And, but so what did you envision when you started Myths, Monsters and Mullets as a podcast? What was your original concept for it?
I originally planned it to be just like every other encounter show. The ones that I listen to. People come on, tell their encounters, and we move on.
Yeah.
But it changed over the year.
Yeah.
It started out, it was encounters. I would have people on, like well, one of my first interviews was Jason Kinsey. And he's well known in the Bigfoot community, so but it was still the same encounters types podcast that you hear everywhere.
Yeah.
In this thing, so it led me to here to you.
Yeah. Oh well, yeah. Well, that's. I'm sorry to hear that. We can get help. We'll get you help with that.
So I did have a question.
911.
I did have a question about I watch you do it a lot, and that's the tree knocks and the screams and stuff like that. Does it ever concern you that maybe because we don't know what those things are, that you're saying something that might just tick off or maybe turn on the Bigfoot?
All the time. I think about that all the time. Like I think, especially when we blast the Minnesota roars, right? Because I'm telling you, they don't sound like they're like, hey, we're having a little party over here. Let's come on over and let's have a happy joy. And no, they sound like they are, whatever it is, either injured or pissed off or giving birth. Like we just don't know what it's doing. But I think about that too. When I howl or I do the wood knocks, things start happening within 45 minutes after I howl. It's almost as if these Bigfoot creatures are like a mile away or 2 miles away, and they're like doing something. They're like, oh, what's that? What was that? I'm going to go investigate. And then they come. So that's the biggest reason why I howl is, I get results, right? I get either howl back or then things know that we're there.
Do you ever notice that whenever you play these sounds in the woods that other creatures react to them?
Well, dogs. We've had a couple dogs that kind of freak out over it. When I was in Pennsylvania, we heard an owl. So we all started doing our own unique owl sound. There was about 6 or 7 of us, and we're with a tracker. And he was an awesome tracker. And we heard an owl, so I was like, woo-hoo, woo-hoo. And then the tracker could do a perfect owl sound. And then another one. And then I think I went, cuckoo, 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 cuckoo. And then one of the other guys did another owl sound. And then the tracker did one. Then one of the girls did one. Then all of a sudden, out of the darkness came something that blew me away. Oh, you want to know?
Oh, yeah.
Something I've never heard before. And in fact, the tracker, who is a hunter, who knows these words like the back of his hand, has never heard anything like this again. But it was like 5 or 6 owls, and they were all freaking out. They were all hooting, but all the hoots sounded completely off. But it was almost like they were imitating what we were doing. And I caught it all on camera, and I caught the sound and everything. And I caught the reaction when it happened. And the tracker, he comes up and he's like, "Man, that wasn't coyotes. That's a sound I've never heard before." It was so fascinating. And that's in it's called Terror in the Woods. That's what I'm calling it. I think it's number 15, and it's going to be releasing within a month or so. I'm just kind of waiting. It's already at the distributor and getting ready to go out there, but there's going to be quite a bit of stuff for people to watch, for sure. I mean, the 5 new people that I get.
Well, hopefully they follow me too.
Yeah,
I can use those 5 as well. Tell them, if you're listening to this, tell them John sent you.
Yeah, exactly.
And somewhere along the way, it changed.
Yeah. So let's talk about how it changed. So you're right. There's 10,000 encounter podcasts out there. All of them bring something good to the table. Some are obviously much better than the others, but it's all, okay. And you hear the same, you see, I've heard this guy on this one. I heard this guy on this one. Same guy on all these. You might get a little something out. One podcaster may be able to get a little something out of him that the other guy didn't. So, when you started, I was thinking, well, it's still kind of a similar flavor to the others, but yet it was not. You brought a little bit of a humor to it, even in those serious ones, because you've got the mullet, because just the way you approach people and the way you've got a humorous spirit. So there was already, it was seasoned differently than the other shows. So as it evolved, it's evolved into, how would you categorize what it's evolved into?
Somewhere along the way, it turned into more of, I want to call it kind of a human interest podcast with people who've had encounters. I think I spend a lot more time now getting to know the person rather than just listening to the encounter and breaking it down.
Yeah. Well, and there's a couple of episodes I've listened to of yours where it was like that. Like, clearly some of the lodge tale stories, he comes on, and the goal is to let's talk about Native American, encounters. But you get to get to know the guy, and you get to know some of that culture beyond the paranormal encounters, which I found interesting. That's a connection that you just don't get with some of the other shows. So I would agree with the fact that it's become more of a human interest thing, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, I enjoy that part of it because, as I sit back and I listen to my own show. I mean, you have to. It's the only way you get better. But, as I sit back and I listen to these people talk, I realize that I'm getting to know the person.
Yes.
And if I feel like I know the person, I believe them. I believe them more, than just somebody coming in and, hey, I saw Bigfoot, at my window last night,
Yeah. Well, it changes the way you have that conversation with them too. It makes it, like you're saying, if it's a human interest story, and you get to know the person during that interview, and you always take a few minutes before the conversation, that you hit record. But as you're getting to know these folks, when you start changing the way you're approaching that conversation with them, it becomes a conversation that we're listening to, that it draws me in as a listener more so than it's just, oh, Bobby showed up and he's talking about, the fact that he danced with Bigfoot in the moonlight, right? Now it's something like I'll say case in point, okay, like Lodge Tales. One of my favorite human interest things to come out of the Lodge Tales is when he was talking about somebody he knew as a cousin or something, I can't remember now, and he struggled with alcoholism. Okay. Mm-hmm. And he goes in and he gets rid of all the alcohol in his house. But the next day he's got alcohol again. And what was happening is the demon was putting it, or the evil spirit was putting it out there on the picnic table. right? Because the evil spirit wants him to be broken and all that. But while that's a paranormal encounter, what we got to hear in there was the struggle that Native Americans have with alcohol.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They touched on that a little bit. And, and I know some Native Americans who have struggled with alcoholism because of, of certain things that have happened to them in that culture. So there was a connection there that I'd already had a connection with, and then he was just, telling that human side of it, as well as a spiritual side and as well as a paranormal side. But it became more than just a spooky story,
Right.
is what I'm getting at.
And Rod, I have to admit, is one of my favorite guests. He's been on the show 4 times. He's got 3 standalone episodes, and then he just was back on for a live not too long ago. And one of my favorite episodes with him is the one drawing parallels,
Yeah.
because that was supposed to be a paranormal chat, and it ended up being a spiritual chat.
Is that the one
We
where he
spent
was talking
way
about
more time
Mudman and
talking.
yeah, is that the one where
Yeah.
he's talking about Mudman and Rib Woman?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I called it the drawing parallels, because there were so many stories that his culture has that lines up with what we read in the Bible. It's kind of well known, is all around the world. It seems every culture has a flood story. Like Noah's Ark type flood story. Does your culture have that?
Yeah. There was a flood story. When that happened, we have a story of this muskrat. It's the one that went down, and when he went down, see, there was this being here, and he was here since before that flood time. And when he was here, we call him Old Man or Napi. And this is one of the Napi stories. But when he come up, see, because Napi, let me just describe who Napi is first. Napi was, so before the flood, there were people, and these people come from Mudman and Rib Woman in our Genesis stories. And Mudman, see, we're really literal on how things are. So Mudman, they say, was created, when Napi Natusi was here on this land, or the creator was here, he decided to create an image of himself. And the image he created was Mudman. And how he did it was he gathered up clay by the river and just shaped it. Then he blew life into it. And he came to life, and he started kind of stumbling around, didn't really know how to walk or anything. This was Mudman. And by this time, Napi Natusi could only come here during the new moon, when there was no moon in the sky. Those 4 days were the only time, and he would come down, and he would teach Mudman how to live. And in this time, there was no such thing as death. Death wasn't introduced yet. So these people lived a long, long time. And over time, as he was teaching them how to live on this world in balance and in harmony with everything, he got lonely. Mudman got lonely, and he asked the creator if he could make him a companion. And that's when he put him to sleep. And in our story, saying he reached in and he grabbed his rib, and he created woman from that rib. That's Rib Woman. And it always blew my mind, like, how do you guys in the Bible know our story? Man, ours is like way older than your Bible. Like, our ways are like 40,000 plus years old. Like, how? Anyways, that's a whole different topic. But he creates his companion, and they start having children. And remember, there's no death yet. And so over time, the children, as they grew up, they started playing adult, and they got kicked away, basically started having kids of their own. And hey, you're not supposed to do that. You guys got to go live over here now. And it just happened like that. It just kept happening. And people were populating everywhere. Well, it got to the point where Mudman and Ribwoman couldn't even visit all of their children, you know. It would take them all year to go to every one of their camps, and they even started developing their own languages. They couldn't even understand them after a while. And at that time, that's when she asked the Creator, can we have death so that these children, value us more? They don't even come to visit us anymore, and we can't even go see them all anymore. And she was holding a baby at the time. They had a baby, her and Mudman, and he said, well, I tell you what, and they were sitting by this river, if I throw this buffalo chip into the water and it floats, things will stay the way they are. There will be no death. And she said, and so he threw it in, it floated. And so, well, there it is. No, that's not how it should be. How about we throw this rock in there, and if it floats, then it'll be as it should be. And he said, well, have it your way. And she threw that rock in there, and it sunk. And so death became from that. And the first person to ever die in this world, according to our stories, was Mudman and Ribwoman's baby. It was the first one to die. She got her wish. And so because of all of this, all the children moving out and away, they lost their knowledge of the Creator. They didn't know anymore. And so this is when Napi was introduced. And he was almost like a direct copy of the Creator. He was so powerful when the Creator made him and sent him here. See, because he couldn't come here all the time and be here all the time, because he's only restricted to those 4 days of the new moon. And that's a whole story in itself, why that is. But as Napi appears here, he was really good. He was really a powerful person, and he created a lot of things. He created a lot of land, like different features in our land and all of this and that. Well, as he started teaching everybody how to live again, at some point the flood hit. And when the flood hit, there was like this one area where the people were kind of gathered, this one high area, and it was the only thing there was just that little bit of rock pointing out of the water like that. And he called all these animals to him. See, he was so powerful, he could talk to all these animals, and he was trying to get their help. One by one, they all failed. He was trying to get them to go dive into that water and to bring up more land. Well, they all failed except for the muskrat. He barely made it back. And when he did, he was almost dead, almost drowned. He had a little bit of dirt in his paw. And from that, he took it and he started creating more land, more and more for the people to live on. And that was also during the time when different languages were reintroduced, I guess you'd say, to everybody. Like everybody had a different language. It was also during that time. And as soon as everybody moved out and start reliving again, this is an interesting part of this whole saga, is that he eventually led a migration out of North America overseas somewhere, like led people over that way. And we think he did it by way of Alaska, and he went out that way. And over time, he eventually came back. And remember now, this is a long time that Napi was here. I mean, it's a long, long time, And he eventually led a migration back here. And when he got back here, he noticed that some of the people that were left here were savage. They were cannibals, things like that. So he had to reteach them how to be real people again. That's where we get that term Nisitapik. Like, we are Nisitapik. We are the real people. That's how we refer to ourselves, and that's what he had to do, is teach them how to be real people again. And that's the interesting part, because science and all these other things say we originated from Africa and came here. Well, in our stories, that's only half the story. There was a whole time before that. And then, so to a lot of us, when we hear these guys say, oh, you're because they'll call us Chinese, they'll call us Mongolian. Yeah, you keep thinking what you want, but there's a history that's way older than we even remember.
That's right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was thinking that when I heard that, I was like, "Holy moly, that's Adam and Eve, man." You know, that's Adam and Eve. And it's told through their cultural lens, right? And of course, that is hopeful that that truth is permeating, into the culture. But, one of the things he made a comment there, if I remember, something like, "Well, our story is 40 something thousand years old, right?" Well, I love the guy. Just listening to him, I love the guy. I've listened to some of his episodes because he just pulls you in and he's so real. But we could have a deeper discussion on when and what's the timelines and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I thought that was a great episode. All said and done, that was a great episode with him.
Yeah. And, speaking of the spiritual side, you and I did the Paranormal Bible episode.
Yeah.
And I get so many comments about that episode. And I don't, when I look back at the editing I did on that, I don't think it was all the greatest that I ever did.
Right.
But the content
Yeah.
of that episode, I think, is what kept people around. I apologize for the editing.
Well, look, I look back on some of my stuff too, and I'm like, I hear things and see things. I'm like, even though mine's mostly audio and not so much visual, I listen to things. I go, what was I doing? What was I doing there? But no, I get you. But yeah, look, that was a powerful episode because I was trying to tell my buddy Todd, who was on there, he was reluctant, because he's a great guy, played a very big important part in my spiritual journey, but he's of the modern Western church that doesn't like to address the paranormal. So I told him, I said, look at it this way. There are people out there that believe in this stuff that are hungry for the truth. They're literally seekers, and they're getting told it's aliens, and they're getting told it's this and that and everything. I said, it's a mission field. If you're truly wanting to reach people, this is a hungry people that you're not going to have to search for. They're literally lining up to have that conversation. And that's what got him on there. And I thought he did okay, but man, your guy was the guy that he was unafraid, man. He was, let's talk about it. Let's go.
We have all these different religions. We have even different denominations of Christianity. But he said, not his view of it is, there's one creator, but not everybody's path is the same to the creator. So when you start seeing all these parallels in these different stories, could it be that just because, he's not a Christian, but when you start listening to the stories that they have, very similar to ours, could it be that God gives people a different path through these different denominations or different religions?
Yeah, I mean, I found that episode really interesting just to listen to him talk from his perspective. And but yeah, I mean, universalism sounds so beautiful. It really does. I had a friend in college, and we had almost this exact conversation just late at night. We were both student teaching. I was staying in his house, and I remember just laying in his room one night, and I mean, he was raised in, a Christian home, just like I was. But I remember him saying almost that exact same thing, is that, I just believe that there's lots of different paths and they're all leading to the same place. But like the more that you look at all of those different paths, they're all talking about a very different God.
Mm-hmm.
And from a Christian, I mean, obviously Dan and I are definitely coming from this. I know Alan is, I know John, from what I mean, you are too. The Bible is very clear that is not the way. I mean, Jesus is emphatic when he says, I am the way and the truth and the life, and no man comes to the Father except through me. And so as beautiful as it is to believe that we're just all on a path and we're all going to land at the same place. I don't believe that you can be a Christian and really adhere to that. As nice as it is to believe that, and I think about universalism every time I see one of those stinking coexist things on the back of the person's just like.
Oh, I had something I wanted to say about that, but I'm not going to because I'll get so much hate in the comments.
Right. But yeah. So I mean, as beautiful an idea as universalism is, like, I don't know. I just think there are a lot of paths out there, and obviously we live in a country where you're free to pursue any of those paths. But the Bible, if you're a Christian, that's not an option for you. That's not what the Bible teaches.
Yeah.
Jesus is very specific in who he is and what the path to salvation and a right relationship with the Creator is. Mm-hmm. And as you look at all of these other religions, and that's a very slippery slope. So are we going to say, let's go all the way back to the Old Testament and let's look at Moloch? Is Moloch a valid path to God? Is burning your children to worship Moloch a valid path to God? And, obviously no. But to me, that's where universalism really breaks down, is where do you stop with that? Is every path that anyone comes up with an okay path? Is it going to get you to where you ultimately need to be in a relationship with the Creator? And, as far as the Bible is concerned, and, that's where I'm founding my life on. That's my sure foundation. That's the strong tower I'm running to. No, it is not. So, I certainly respect what he was trying to communicate, and it's not something that I can accept. Even though it sounds so good, it does sound so warm and fuzzy. We're just all seeking. We're all on a path, and everybody has their own journey, and God's going to draw us in all these different ways.
Even to kind of dovetail what you're saying there, I went down the Eastern philosophies before I became a Christian. I was deep into that stuff, reading the teachings of the Dalai Lama and all that. And then, because it lures you in, you go, oh, what a beautiful, I want to do good to my fellow man and all that, and then find nirvana. But when you really get to the heart of Buddhism, man, it's a tough religion. It's sad. It's tough. You have to work so hard to try to attain nirvana, right? And you're never going to do it. That's why so few people supposedly there are so few Buddhas, is because no one can attain it. And then when you fail to attain it, you're not born into a better life. You're born into a worse life than the one that you were just in. So while it sounds beautiful it's got a pretty package, but man, when you open that package up, it's a dark religion. Yeah. So to talk about, what Todd's getting at, and to hit to your answer, I walked that path, walked it, and was miserable ultimately.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add to that, Dan?
Boy, do I ever. Yeah, it's Todd. There's a lot of similarities. We all have a creation story or all these things, but let me give you just some distinct differences that every other world religion outside of Christianity, and I'll just say Christianity too, every world religion creates a mountain. There is a problem in our hearts, in our lives, right? There is this thing that has to be, whether it's, what Alan referenced or whatever. But here's the distinct difference of all the other world religions, all the other gods, and Jesus. All the other world religions, all the other gods require you to climb the mountain to fix it. You have to fix the problem. You have to reach a certain level. You have to, I mean, this is why we have people strapping things to themselves and doing stuff to people, right? They are attempting to achieve something of a spiritual awakening. But Jesus says, you know what? I'll come down the mountain. I'll fix the issue. I'll take care of the problem. And that's why you see the sin issue. We are all born with it. What is the payment of that? The Bible says it's death. Without the shedding of blood, there's no forgiveness of sins. Here's the requirement of sacrifice for that forgiveness. We see that through the Old Testament. And then what we see is Jesus fulfills all of the requirements that are necessary for a sacrifice of forgiveness of sins, and he is crucified on the cross for all of mankind. And then here's the tension, because I don't know if you know this or not, but no real historian and no real atheist will deny the existence of a man named Jesus in Nazareth. That is irrefutable. Not outside of the Bible, there are so many. Josephus writes about this man. I mean, that is so irrefutable. Here's the tension. Jesus Christ rose from the dead. And he sits at the right hand of God as Father. And no other world religion has a God that raised from the dead.
Right.
They're all serving a God that's dead, and they're trying to climb the mountain to earn or achieve. And Jesus said, you know what? I'm just going to come down the mountain. I'll fix the issue for you, and I'll offer it to you as a free gift. And not only that, but I'm a living God. I am the living God who offers you an invitation to know me personally. That's the distinct difference in all of it.
Yeah. That's Dan.
But I say all that to go, yes. So the fact that your show evolved from just talking about Bigfoot, right, to having spiritual conversation is that's a big, that the way you handle it, it's a big transformation from what you might have intended.
Yeah. You and I had talked about doing that episode for a while before we actually did it. And it did make me step out of my comfort zone, because I'm all about Bigfoot. I'm all about the paranormal.
Right.
I wouldn't say religion is my wheelhouse.
Right.
Am I Christian? Yes. But that isn't my strongest suit. But I think it was a good episode. There was a lot of stuff that we brought up that, like you said, people don't even talk about, and they should be.
Yeah. So I like that. I like that you're willing to have a conversation. Of course, you always do try to turn it back into some sort of, let's get to the paranormal and the cryptid stuff. But, that's what I like about it. If I were to just come across your show, not knowing, and I'm just looking, oh, here's, another, cryptid show that I'm going to listen to, I'm going to end up coming away from listening to one of your shows going, wow, that went somewhere I didn't expect it to go, but in a good way. So with that, as it evolved, we've talked about a couple of the, so I guess, where do you see it going?
Well, I mean, I just see more of thinking outside the box. I try not to have the same people on that you hear on all the other shows. I'm looking for people that are just on the fringe of the paranormal, that may have paranormal encounters, to bring them in, because I think there's a lot of people who think that you have to be all in on the paranormal to be on a paranormal podcast.
Yeah.
And I've found over this last year, there's a lot of people who have had paranormal encounters who are just really interesting people.
Yes.
And we get to their paranormal encounters, but you learn that these are just really, really interesting people. And the one that jumps out at me is Timothy Wayne Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah, he paints Bigfoot, hidden Bigfoot into his paintings. And that's what he's known for.
Yeah.
But once I had him on the show, again, it took a while to get there, but he has some paranormal encounters, some weird things that happened to him. He had a Crossroads moment.
Mm.
All right. Well, we've been doing this for like 30 minutes and we have not talked anything paranormal, which is what everybody comes to my show for.
Yeah,
and
my bad.
I have heard a couple of your paranormal encounters.
Mhm.
Really interested in the guy that showed up at your jam
Oh,
session or whatever it was.
yeah. So back when I was in high school, I had this band. I had like this hard rock band, and we had saved a bunch of money and decided to rent out this. It's hard to explain what this is. It was just kind of like a big barn that people rented out just for this kind of thing to have like shows. We were going to put on this big show, and we rented a bunch of gear and everything for it. It was a big deal for us. But there was nothing to this building. It was just like this big building with a stage, and I think there was an area that was like a bar slash snack bar, depending on what was going on in there. And there were two big garage doors for load in and load out. And then there was one other door that was just the in and out door that, customers would come in and out. Well, we were there setting up late one night. It was the night before we were going to have this big show. And we had got all done setting up, and we were all standing around the mixing board, basically saying goodbye to each other and, hey, I'll see you tomorrow. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, we hear this cackling, loud laugh. And I mean, totally startled everybody. And we look up, and there is this short black man sitting on one of our PA speakers, just sitting on there, just laughing his head off like he's heard the funniest thing ever. And we're all looking at each other like, who is this guy? How'd he get in? And what is he laughing about? And this is really creepy. And everyone kind of pushes me forward to go talk to this guy, find out what his deal is. So I went up there, basically chased the guy out, and I walk up and I'm like, hey man, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh man, hey, I got something for you. You're gonna love this. You're gonna love this. And I'm like really worried about what he's gonna try to give me or whatever. He reaches behind his back. This was straight out of like a cartoon or something. I still don't know how he did this. He reached behind his back and pulled out a stack of Polaroids between his two fingers like this. It's like, I don't even know how one does that. Put your hand behind your back and grab a stack of Polaroids this big.
So
And
were they like sitting there on the speaker or whatever?
that's the thing. I don't know. I don't know how he grabbed it. He just reached behind his back and suddenly came up with a stack of Polaroids. And he's like, I can hook you up with this. I can get you some of this. And he's like showing me these Polaroids, and they are the most pornographic stuff I've ever seen. Really graphic. And I'm like, oh, okay, this guy's like a pimp. So I'm like, okay, dude, I'm absolutely not interested. And he's like, okay, no problem. I get you anything though. And he kept saying, I can get you whatever you want. And I'm like, okay, is he talking drugs or is he talking, and I kept just, nah, And then he got real serious and he like looked me in the eyes and he was like, I can get you anything. What do you need? And that freaked me out big time when he suddenly got like real serious and looked me in the eyes like that. And about that time, one of the guitarists wanders up and of course, he's going through the Polaroids. I'm like, dude, and I'm like, no, I'm absolutely not interested. And I grab the guitarist and we walk away. And I didn't walk far at all. We're talking steps away. And I go back to the soundboard and we all kind of huddle. And you know how you do that thing where before you talk about someone, you kind of look over your shoulder and make sure they're not listening. Everyone was like, what do you want? What do you want? And I look over my shoulder to, say, okay, well, and I look over my shoulder and he's gone. And we're all like, where the hell did this guy go? And we're looking around like, I mean, there's nothing to this building. Okay. There's like nowhere to hide really. And like the only place I think he could have hid was behind the bar or under my drum riser. And we looked both those places. And the guy was not there. He didn't open the garage doors to leave. We had already shut and locked the garage doors. And the only way he could have got out is the front door, which he would have had to walk by us to get to the front door. This guy absolutely appeared and disappeared, like without us ever seeing how he came or went.
Oh my God.
Totally freaked us out. And the weird thing was, another weird thing was, years later, I'm talking to my sister about it. My sister was there. She actually was married to one of the guitar players. And I'm like, remember that creepy guy? She had no recollection of this at all. Neither did my brother-in-law, who was in the band. And I talked to two other guys who were in the band. No clue. They had no recollection at all of it. It was just 2 weeks ago. One of my best friends was kind of our roadie, and I was talking to him about it. And I was like, you remember that, right? And thank God he remembered it. He was like, oh, yeah, we talked about that for months. He's like, I don't know why no one else remembers that. So I thought that was really bizarre.
It kind of sounds like Robert Johnson.
Yes. Yeah, I know. People have said that. They're like, that was your Crossroads moment.
Yeah.
And the more I've thought about it over the years, it's like it kind of was, because out of all of us guys in the band, I was the dirt poorest. And I wanted to be a rock star so bad. It wasn't even funny. I would have done anything. Oh, well, almost anything.
In the story that he told, he was being tempted at that point.
Yeah.
And he chose correctly.
The fact that he realized it was a crossroads moment is important, because a lot of times people don't realize. They really don't.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he realized it in the moment or if he realized it later on.
Yeah.
But listening to the story, yeah, it absolutely was a crossroads moment for him.
Who were some beyond him, or in addition to him, that you feel were really, really fun, special conversations?
I have to put Maxim Furyk on this list. Not only because the interview was really good, but because he wanted to come back on the show. And that's all that makes a podcaster feel good. When you have a guest say, man, I want to come back on your show. And I'm glad he did, because his second interview that when he came on is over across all platforms, my number one most viewed episode.
Yeah.
And that was the Schmurro haunting, which has to do with the Conjuring movie.
Yeah.
What's your viewpoint on evil, the devil? Do you think it exists?
Yeah, I believe what Pope John Paul II said. Yeah, I believe that it exists. And I know a lot of people that are kind of cavalier about this. Like, it's not cool, it's not hip to admit that, like you're being, an old fuddy-duddy or a traditionalist or a conformist or whatever. And that's not true. I mean, come on, evil takes the guise of a lot of things. I mean, there's, people, whatever. I mean, I just believe that it's true, that it's valid, and that I think that what we need to do is just try to stay in the light, maybe fill yourself with God's grace, whatever. And I don't want to get real spiritual and lay my trip on anybody else, but but I believe that. I think too that like happiness is fleeting, and when something good happens, you share it and celebrate it with your friends, trusted others. And when bad things happen, when they go sideways, just ride with it, because that too will pass, whatever that is. So, but except for a demonic, attachment, they need forever. So,
then you need an old priest and a young priest.
Yeah. They claim that these demons can attach themselves either to people or to places. And in my book, there was Father Alphonse Treebolt. He was the one that actually was able to go and cleanse that the one house, the Schmurro haunting. They tried this. So many people tried. Ed and Lorraine Warren were there, and they brought on in all the Catholic exorcists from northeastern Pennsylvania, but nobody was able to get the job done. But anyway, Father Treebolt from New York, Father Alphonse Treebolt came, and it took him 4 attempts, but he was able to go and cleanse the Schmurro haunting. But here's the thing. I mean, that was great. He did it. Father Treebolt tried to do this cleansing in New York State, and he couldn't. And he said, he wrote in his memoirs, he says that some places are just evil. And when that happens, you go and you get your belongings, and you don't say where you're going to go, and you just leave the house. He goes that they're just evil ground that cannot be cleansed. And this was a guy that was, one of the top guns, as far as demonologist, as exorcist, Father Treebolt. But there was the one place that he said that it was just like unholy ground, stay away from it. And that was the final say with that. So that was pretty interesting. But again, this was an example of demonic possession of a property, of a structure. And so
you gave me a little bit of homework, and my teachers from high school are probably going to ask how you got me to do my homework. But I did look into the Schmurro haunting a little bit. It seems kind of similar to the Amityville Horror.
Yeah. Your classic haunted house, your classic poltergeist home, and what they experienced, what the Schmurros experienced. They were devout Roman Catholics. They had 3 daughters and a collie dog, which is important. But they started to experience the smells, horrible smells, grunting sounds, profanities etched in the mirrors. Jack Schmurro, and I don't know how I would feel about this, but Jack Schmurro admitted to the world that he was raped by a female demon, a succubus. And for us guys to admit something like that, I mean, like it takes a lot of courage to be able to do. So that was so what happened was they started to complain. The Catholic Church would send priests over to spend the night there, see if there's anything happening, and nobody could get it right. They brought in Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they weren't able to do anything. And then finally it was Father Treebolt who came in, and he was the one that was able to cleanse the house. But I'd like to see there's going to be a motion picture in September on the Schmurro haunting and the involvement of of Ed and Lorraine Warren. It's called The Conjuring: Last Rites. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I think a bunch of us are going to go. And again, in Co-Regent Hoodoo, I have a chapter on the Schmurro haunting, on Ed and Lorraine Warren, on Father Treebolt, and all of that stuff. And I'll tell you what, John, of all the things that I dabble in, whether it's flying saucers, Bigfoot, all of this stuff, I mean, demonology and what I call Catholic mysticism speaks to me in a louder voice. I mean, it just gets my attention. I mean, just like it's gripping, and I'm not sure why that is, but I mean, my curiosity is just spiked. I just want to find out as much about it as I can. And that's what we do, us paranormal, seekers, searchers, researchers, whatever we are, we have that driving curiosity. And I think that's what motivates us. That's what motivates me, of course.
And maybe I missed this. You mentioned Ed and Lorraine Warren and saying that, you would call Ed. How exactly did you meet them?
Yeah. Okay. So they were in a place called Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. And I don't know, are you familiar with Jim Thorpe, the decathlon? He was a Native American guy that won all kinds of awards and everything. It was just pretty amazing. And because he accepted some monies as an amateur, he was classified as a professional. And then he was like castigated and everything else. It was just horrible what they did. But anyway, back home in Jim Thorpe, there was two rival towns called Mok Chunk, East Mok Chunk and West Mok Chunk. And they decided that they would go and make peace and bring in the body of the disgraced Jim Thorpe and have this monument for him, and then change the name from Mok Chunk to Jim Thorpe. So that's what they did. They brought in the body. They had this thing. It was a nice tourist attraction. And then just recently, the Native Americans from Oklahoma wanted the body back. But Jim Thorpe's keeping the body here so far, But anyway, that was Jim Thorpe's. In 1988, Ed and Lorraine Warren came to Jim Thorpe. It was the beginning of a 15-city book tour for the book The Haunted, which was about the Schmurro haunting. And so I heard about this. So I wrote a letter to the guy that was in charge of the theater there, and I asked if I could have permission to interview them, and hung out with them, took pictures, and it was pretty amazing. But over the years, I would call Ed up, specifically Ed, and ask him questions about how he did battle. Lorraine had a pet rooster you could hear in the background. Their big thing was the doll Annabelle. Now, Annabelle was supposed to be kept under lock and key there in Monroe, Connecticut, where the Warrens' house of paranormal museum is. I think it's their nephew, Tony Spira, took Annabelle out on the road, took Annabelle down to New Orleans, where two really weird things happened that people thought was because of Annabelle. There was a prison break. I think 10 guys jumped out, an inside job. And the other one was there was a fire. And a lot of internet chatter blamed it on Annabelle. Now, Tony Spira was saying that, well, there's a priest there that accompanies the doll, and the doll is in their sight at all times and all this. But Annabelle's going to be in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania at the conference, and that's going to be in July. So I plan on being there and, meeting Tony Spira and just seeing who's there and seeing what's up with that. But that was part of the Warrens' legacy. There was 9 Conjuring motion pictures, 9 worth $2.1 billion with a B, $1 billion.
And that's it for tonight. Be looking out for part 2 coming out tomorrow. And if you've had a paranormal encounter you'd like to share, you can email me at mythsandmullets@gmail.com. Don't forget to check out the descriptions in all my videos. You're going to find a list of all my favorite podcasts, from Nevermore Hollows, Drunken Cryptids, Chumming with the Spirits, Ghost Gossip, and so much more. Check out all the descriptions, click on the links, make sure you go over and subscribe, and tell them John sent you.
Shadow in the pines, lurking in the dusky air. Bigfoot stomps through the woods like he don't care. Lights in the sky flash green then blue. Aliens descending with a secret or two. Whispers in the breeze, cold fingers down your spine. Ghosts in the graveyard, twisting through time. Eyes wide open in the dead of night. The myths and monsters giving one hell of a fright. Oh, Myths, Monsters, and Mullets podcast, spinning wild tales of a future and a past. Hosted by John Methenkamp's fiery soul. He takes us where the wild unknown flows. Oh, Myths, Monsters, and Mullets podcast, spinning wild tales of a future and a past. Hosted by John Methenkamp's fiery soul. He takes us where the wild unknown flows. Down by the bayou, you hear a raspy growl. Swamp gas glowing as the coyotes howl. A UFO